we can all be a little bit guilty sometimes of maybe making some premature judgments about a whiskey. So I'm sat here today to tell you that maybe I was wrong. Welcome back, Dram fam, to the Whiskey Diary. Yeah! The other week, I travelled down to London to hang out with some very good new friends of mine. That is Vin PF from No Nonsense Whisky and Mac from Palate. If you are into whiskey, I would suggest you go and give both those guys a follow. I will drop links to their channels down in the description. Well, as it turns out, they had a very special day planned indeed. We went for some beers and then we all headed over to the Bimber distillery in northwest London to meet Matt Mackay. Many of you may know him as the Dramble on Twitter for his successful whiskey blog, but he is also a big part of Bimber, and he was kind enough to show us around, take us for a wonderful guided tour of the distillery, told us everything there is to know about what makes Bimber Bimber. Following that, we were treated to a tasting of some fantastic whiskies. Now, I've had very limited exposure to Bimber's whiskey. For the most part, all I hear that it's revered for its collectability, its high resale value and how well it does at auction. Unfortunately, it's been very difficult for me to actually get my hands on a bottle of it. So if we see this from my perspective, it's a newish brand that's got a high collectability on its bottles, charging a fairly premium price for its no age statement liquid. It's obviously then far too easy for me to assume that a whiskey whose collectability is talked about more than its deliciousness, it's probably going to be crap. I foolishly made that assumption. That's not to say it's bad, but I often kind of positioned it as the Macallan of English whiskey. That's not to say the liquid isn't delicious, but probably not, in my opinion, as delicious as the price tag would have you believe. So anyway, we're sat there having this tasting. I've got to say, the liquid is very good. And while we tried all of these bottles, some better than others, there was one which really stood out. This is the Bimber Klub Release number 3. This is, of course, an English whiskey. It is bottled at 51.2%. It is natural colour. It is unchill filtered. It is a vatting of ex-bourbon casks and something very special. As far as I understand, Bimber sent some of their casks over to Brew by Numbers, BBNO, a fantastic craft beer brewery. I'm actually quite partial to their big imperial stouts, which is exactly what they put in that cask. After an amount of time, that cask was emptied and sent back to Bimber, where they finished this in it. When I tried this at that tasting, I was absolutely blown away. Now, before I go on to it, let's have some tasting notes. The first thing I get on the nose is a huge hit of milk chocolate. Think chocolate croissants, pain au chocolat, some wonderful baking spices in there, maybe a hint of fresh tobacco, like cigar tobacco, unlit fresh cigars. It's got a really nice kind of peanut butter, sweet peanut butter note going on, tons of vanilla. Then underpinning all of that is a really nice, like, fruity apples and pears note. In this instance, I'd say more of like a spiced apple, but a really nice sweet fruitiness on the palate. The texture is enormously thick and creamy. Right up front, more of that chocolate, massive baking spices, tons of vanilla. That pastry note really comes forward. Has a bit of a sweet lactose, sweet condensed milk vibe going on. I think the texture really leans into that as well. That fruit starts to come up, this time kind of manifesting itself towards like stewed pears, a little bit less apple, a little bit more pears. The finish, that milk chocolate starts to turn slightly dark and bitter. Maybe a bit of a subtle smokiness going on underneath it. It's really big and malty, massive hit of barley sugar, and you know, that kind of interplay between that vanilla, the creamy lactosey note, and the chocolate gives me like a kind of chocolate vanilla fudge vibes. This stuff is like drinking a glass of tiramisu. It is big and it's boozy and it is chocolatey and it is creamy. It is honestly, I dare say, genuinely one of the most delicious whiskies I have ever tasted. As soon as this thing touched my lips, I was absolutely blown away. The nose alone is stunning. I mean, I'm not going to say it's a hugely deep and complex evolution that you get from nose to finish, but what it is absolutely stunning from start to finish. Now, whilst I did moan earlier about the price of Bimber, what really took me aback about this is it's only £70 a bottle. Now, I do appreciate that is an expensive bottle, but incredibly small batch distillery. The stills are no bigger than me. We're talking handcrafted, hand selected. This is genuinely such a small distillery. It completely took me by surprise when I got there. I thought this was a much bigger outfit than it was, but it really does feel like almost a DIY setup. But they're producing excellent liquid that's competing with distilleries much bigger than themselves. Well, they're certainly being compared to distilleries much bigger than themselves. For the quality, care, and overall uniqueness that has gone into this whiskey, I personally think that £70 is a steal. If you told me that this bottle was £100, I would still go back and buy another one. Now, this was not an ad, this was not paid for in any way by Bimber. I paid for this bottle out of my own money. In fact, a massive thank you to Matt Mackay, because I pretty much bullied the poor dude into selling me this bottle. It absolutely blew my mind. So I just want to say a massive thank you to Vin, a massive thank you to Mac for sorting that out, and a massive thank you to Matt Mackay for taking time out of his day to show us around. But anyway, that's enough from me. Thank you very much for watching, and a massive thank you to my patrons on Patreon. Let me know down in the comments if you're a big fan of Bimber, if you are one of the lucky few to have got your hands on a bottle, and let me know what you think of it. As for the rest of you, if you like this video, please do click the like button, and if you'd like to support the channel, please do consider subscribing. And on that note, Slàinte mhath.